All right, so let's talk about Algebra 1, Section 3, Unit 3, Section 1, the coordinate plane and relations. Well, what is a coordinate plane? A coordinate plane is the grid formed by the x and y axes. Where they meet is the origin. The x-axis is the horizontal axis. And the y-axis is the vertical axis. And when we label a coordinate plane, we would put an X here showing that that axis is the x-axis. This is the y-axis. The origin is always going to be designated by the letter O, and its coordinates are 0, 0. Now, as you can see, the two axes break up the coordinate plane into 4 sections called quadrants. The upper right-hand quadrant is Roman numeral 1, and we use Roman numerals to show the quadrants. So Roman numeral 1 in the upper right-hand corner, and we're going to go counterclockwise from there. So 2, 3, and 4 are our quadrants. And the reason we have the coordinate plane is to be able to plot and label points. Point A is the coordinates 5, 4, and that means that the x coordinate is 5, the y coordinate is 4. So starting at the origin, I move 5 units to the right, and then 4 units up will put me here, and I can label that point A. Negative 6, 3 would be left 6, up 3. That's point B. C is at 0, negative 5. That's 0 to the right and 5 down. So we'll put that point here and label it C. D is at negative 4, negative 4. That's 4 to the left and 4 down. Negative 2, 0 would be 2 to the left. There's your E. F is at 1, 2. It goes here. Negative 6 is 1 to the left, 6 down. There's your letter G. H, 5, negative 3. 5 to the right and 3 down is H. We usually don't use the letter I. Why? Because it looks like the Roman numeral 1. It also is very similar to the letter J, so we'll skip letter I when we label points, and we'll do 3, negative 1. 3 to the right, 1 down would be the point J. When you label a point, make sure that the letter that it's associated with goes next to the point. And then we can also name the coordinates of certain points. Down here for point K, that's 3 to the right and 3 up. All points are given in parentheses separated by a comma, and it is in quadrant 1. L is 4 to the right and 2 down. That would be positive 4 and a negative 2. It's in quadrant 4. M is 1 to the left and 4 up. That's negative 1, positive 4, quadrant 2. N is at negative 3, 0. When the point is on an axis, it's not in a quadrant. We'll write down the word none. Now, don't get it mixed up with P being at 0, negative 3. There's a reason why we have ordered pairs, and it's because it tells us which way to go for the x, which way to go for the y coordinate. Again, it's not in a quadrant, so we say none for the quadrant. The domain of a relation is the values we use for the x coordinate. In our ordered pairs, it'll be the first number. The range is the values we use for the y coordinates. A relation is any set of ordered pairs. And when I'm talking about ordered pairs, I'm talking about any set of points. So given the relation, this is a relation 2, 3, negative 2, 3, 1, 0, 2, negative 1, and negative 2, 0. This is a relation because it's merely a set of points. And if I were to state the domain, what we would do is use capital D for domain. All sets of numbers are indicated by a bracket. And I just want to know what numbers am I using for the x coordinates. Well, I'm using a 2. I'm also using a negative 2. I'm using a 1. Now, we don't list this negative 2 the second time. We don't list the negative 2 the second time. I just want to know what numbers am I using in the domain. 2, negative 2, and 1. Typically, they will be written in numerical order, although I won't be counting off for that. So we would have negative 2, 1, and 2 for the domain. The range, what numbers am I using for the y's? So the range is capital R is equal to the set of, now we've put in the numbers that we were using for the y's. I have a 3, and I'm only going to use it once. Once I have a 3, I know that's the number I'm using. I'm using a 0. I'm using a negative 1. Again, I'm not going to write that 0 down the second time. And again, typically, we write those in numerical order, but again, I won't be taking off for that. We would have negative 1, 0, and 3. The inverse of a relation is just listing the coordinates in reverse order. Meaning, instead of xy, just give me the yx. So for this relation above, instead of 2, 3, I'll write 3, 2. Instead of negative 2, 3, I'll put 3, negative 2. Instead of 1, 0, I'll put 0, 1. Instead of 2, negative 1, I'll put negative 1, 2. And instead of negative 2, 0, I'll put 0, negative 2. And that is the inverse of the relation. All right, state the domain and range of each relation below. This is called a table. It is a table showing x's and y's. Sometimes we might see a table written horizontally, and if that were the case, the x's would be on top, the y's on the bottom row. But in this case, I have a table that is written vertically. Again, we just want the domain. What numbers am I using in the domain? 3, 5, 6, and 7. What numbers am I using for the range? Well, my smallest number is negative 1. The next higher number is 2. Then I have a 3 and a 5. But again, do not list that number more than once. And number 4, here are my 5 points. The domain. Well, let's start with this point. What are the coordinates? They are negative 5, positive 1. Well, what's my x-coordinate? Negative 5. I'll move over to the next point in line, and that's this point. And those coordinates are negative 2, 5. Well, what's my x-coordinate? Negative 2. My next x-coordinate would be negative 1. Then we have 2. Again, I'm not going to list that 2 the second time. The range, well, if I start with the bottom point, I will be able to write these in numerical order. So if I go to this point, what are the coordinates? 2, negative 4. What's my y coordinate? Negative 4. Here's 1, -1. So -1 is my y coordinate. Here's 5, 1. 1 is my y coordinate. 2, 2. I have a 2 for the y coordinate. And here is -2, 5. 5 is my y coordinate. So there we have the domain and range for this relation. Then lastly, we have a story problem here. Make a table showing the relation between weight x. Notice that the weight is given by, is going to be the x variable, and calories burned y. Now, a person playing tennis burns 4 calories per hour for every pound he or she weighs. Now, if we knew that to be true, then a person who weighs 100 pounds, here's that person weighing 100 pounds, that's our first x, so we'll put it here. Now, if this person burns 4 calories per hour, how many calories would she burn? Well, 4 for every pound would be 400. And a person weighing 110 would burn 440 calories. 120 would be 480 calories, and 130 would be 520 calories. This is the table that we would create for this situation. Then we would have to graph it. Now notice that this graph does not include an x and a y axis. We don't have the x-axis going here and the y-axis going here. And the reason for that is because we don't have people who weigh a negative number of pounds. So we don't need that section of the graph. We're not going to burn a negative number of calories, so we're not going to need that section. So what we're using here is just quadrant 1 of our coordinate plane. And here is the origin. Here's our x-axis, here's the y-axis, and we're just using the first coordinate, first quadrant. So now we know that the x's go on the bottom axis. Here's our weight. Calories burned would go on the y-axis. Now when we number the axes, I need to include a 100, 110, 120, and 130 on the x-axis. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to put 100, 110, 120, and 130 in these first 4 spots. Well, why not? Well, then our graph would be limited to this portion of the coordinate plane, and I want to spread it out. Plus, your intervals need to be consistent, meaning this. Whatever this gap is, this needs to be the same. If this space right here, going from to that first mark is 100, then the second mark would have to be 200. So we can't do that. What I will do is I will put 100 here. I'm going to skip a line and put 110 here, 120 here, and 130 here. And the reason why I get to get away with that is that I'm going to put a break here. And what that means is that I'm skipping the numbers 0 to 100. And I pick up with 100 here. Here's 110, 120, and 130. And I'm going to do the same thing on the y-axis. I'm going to put a break in here. And I'm going to start at 400. I'm going to have 440, 480, and 520. And when I plot my points, I'm going to have 100, 400, 110, 440, 120, 480, and 130, 520. And from that, I can draw my line.